What if I told you that the best way to catch more fish is to completely destroy the spot you are trying to fish? Sounds insane, right? I know, it goes against every single rule in the Fisherman Handbook. We have all been taught to creep up to the water like a ninja, avoid snapping twigs, and never, ever make a splash. But here is the brutal truth. Sometimes, being dead silent is the exact reason you are not catching a single thing. Today, we are going to talk about a paradox that will blow your mind. I'm going to show you why intentionally walking right into the water, stomping around like an angry hippopotamus, and kicking up a massive cloud of mud can actually trigger an absolute feeding frenzy. I promise you, by the end of this video, you are going to look at a quiet, muddy bank in a completely different way, and you will learn a dirty little secret that will save your next tough day on the water. So I have to ask, are you still tiptoeing around the bank, terrified of scaring the fish away? Let me know in the comments right now, because we are about to break some old rules. Let us talk about where this whole silent treatment comes from. For decades, the old school guys, our fathers and our grandfathers, drilled it into our heads that fish are terrified of their own shadows. The belief has always been that any heavy footsteps on the bank or any disturbance in the shallows will instantly shut down the bite for hours. And sure, there is a grain of truth to that. Fish do have a lateral line, they do feel vibrations, and a sudden unnatural crash will definitely make them dart away in the blink of an eye. Because of this, millions of anglers do the exact same thing year after year. They stand frozen on the edge of the bank, casting into the exact same dead water, too scared to move, waiting for a fish that is never going to come. We have been conditioned to believe that a pristine, undisturbed spot is a productive spot. But in reality, nature is messy, nature is loud. And beneath the surface, the real food chain operates on chaos, not silence. It is time to understand why the old-school logic is actually holding you back. Let us paint a picture that every single one of you knows all too well. It is early in the morning, the sun is barely peeking over the tree line, and a thick, cool mist is sitting heavy on the surface of your favorite pond. You get out of your truck, grab your gear, and start walking down to the bank. But you are not just walking, are you? No, you are creeping. You are tiptoeing like a cat on a hot tin roof. You are desperately trying to avoid stepping on dry twigs. You are gently placing your tackle box down so the plastic does not smack against the rocks, and you are barely even breathing. Why? Because since you were a little kid, someone older and supposedly wiser told you that fish are incredibly skittish creatures. They told you that the slightest vibration, the tiniest unnatural noise, will send every single fish within a 1-mile radius packing for the deep water. So you stand there on the edge of the bank, stiff as a board, terrified to make a sound, casting your line out and praying for a miracle. You wait, and nothing happens. The water is completely dead. But what if I told you that all this sneaking around is exactly why you are going home with an empty cooler? What if the best thing you could possibly do right now is not to stand still, but to march right into that water and cause absolute chaos? Imagine actually doing the unthinkable. You step right off the dry bank and plunge your boots deep into the shallow water. You do not just step softly, you start stomping, you drag your feet, you twist your boots into the soft bottom, and you intentionally churn up the nastiest, thickest cloud of brown muck you can possibly manage. At first, your instincts are screaming at you. Your brain is telling you that you just ruined the spot. And yes, for the first 60 seconds, you absolutely did scare the fish. Any bass, bluegill, or carp that was hanging out in the shallows just bolted toward the middle of the lake as fast as their fins could carry them. You look down at the expanding cloud of dirty water and think to yourself that this was a terrible mistake. But this is exactly where the magic of the feeding frenzy begins. And this is where most fishermen lack the patience to see the strategy through. You see, the initial shock and awe of your splashing is a temporary deterrent, but the physical changes you just made to the water column are about to act like a massive dinner bell for every hungry fish in the vicinity. To understand why this works, we have to look at what is actually happening beneath the surface when that thick mud finally begins to settle. The bottom of a lake or a slow-moving river is not just a bunch of sterile dirt. It is a complex, living ecosystem. For months or even years, layers of dead leaves, decaying plant matter, and soft silt have been building up on the bottom. To us, it just looks like slimy sludge that ruins our shoes. But to a fish, that layer of muck is the equivalent of a massive locked grocery store. It is packed full of nutrients, but more importantly, it is packed full of life. When that bottom is undisturbed, all of those goodies are buried deep, completely hidden from the fish swimming above. The fish know the food is down there, but getting to it requires a lot of energy. They have to root around, sift through the dirt, and work hard for a tiny meal. By stepping in and churning that bottom up with your boots, you are essentially kicking the doors of the grocery store wide open and tossing all the food right out into the aisles. Let us talk about the specific treasures you are unlocking when you do the stomp and stir method. Buried inside that soft mud are thousands of tiny organisms. We are talking about bloodworms, aquatic insects, small nymphs, tiny freshwater shrimp, and various types of larvae that spend their lives hiding in the dark, oxygen-deprived silt. When you grind your boot into the mud, you physically dislodge all of these creatures. Suddenly, a massive cloud of helpless, confused, and highly nutritious bugs is swept up into the water column. They are tumbling around in the dirty water, completely exposed and totally out of control. For any fish swimming nearby, this is the ultimate easy meal. They do not have to dig for it anymore. It is floating right in front of their faces. This mechanical release of bait is the foundation of the feeding frenzy. You have instantly turned a barren, quiet stretch of water into a high-density buffet, and nature simply does not allow a free buffet to go unnoticed for very long. Now let us talk about the visual cue you just created. As you stomp around, you create a massive plume of discolored, murky water that slowly expands outward. Many fishermen hate muddy water, thinking fish cannot see their lures in it. But you have to think like a predator. In the wild, a sudden cloud of mud does not happen by magic. It usually means one of two things. Either a large group of prey is scurrying around the bottom, or a massive bottom-feeding fish, like a huge carp or a giant catfish, is aggressively rooting around for food. Either way, it signals activity. When game fish see a distinct, localized cloud of mud billowing out from the bank, their curiosity is instantly triggered. They are wired by millions of years of evolution to investigate disturbances. They know that where there is a mud cloud, there is usually food. So instead of running away from the dirty water, opportunistic predators will actually swim from the clear water directly toward the edges of the mud plume to see what all the fuss is about. But it is not just about what the fish can see, it is heavily about what they can smell. The bottom layer of mud is often anaerobic, meaning it lacks oxygen, and it traps a tremendous amount of scent molecules. When you break that seal by stomping through the muck, you are releasing a massive burst of scent into the water. It is the smell of decaying organic matter, disturbed earth, and crushed aquatic insects. To human nostrils, it might just smell like swamp gas or rotten eggs, but to a fish's highly sensitive olfactory system, it smells like an absolute feast. This scent trail acts exactly like a chum slick in the ocean. If there is even the slightest current or wind pushing the water, that scent will travel far beyond your actual fishing spot. Fish that are 50 or 100 yards down the bank will pick up on this sudden burst of flavor in the water. They will turn their noses into the current and start swimming directly toward the source of the smell, bringing fresh, hungry fish right to your feet. You have to understand the mentality of an opportunistic feeder. Fish are generally very lazy creatures. They want to consume the maximum amount of calories while expending the minimum amount of energy. In a natural ecosystem, predatory fish often follow around large bottom feeders like carp, suckers, or even wild hogs that might wander into the shallows. When a big animal tears up the bottom, it does the heavy lifting, exposing worms and bugs. The smaller fish and the predators just hang around the edges of the mess, picking off the easy scraps. By walking into the water and kicking up the mud, you are perfectly mimicking the behavior of a giant, clumsy animal. You are acting as the biological bulldozer. The fish do not know it is a human in rubber boots making the mess. All they know is that something big is digging up the bottom, and that means free food. You are tapping into a deeply ingrained instinct that forces them to come investigate, completely overriding their initial fear of the splashing sounds. The feeding frenzy does not start with the monster fish. It works like a chain reaction. The first creatures to respond to your mud cloud are the little guys, the baitfish, the minnows, the small shiners, and the juvenile panfish. Once the mud settles just a tiny bit and the panic wears off, these small fish will dart back into the murky water. They are going after the microscopic treats you stirred up, the tiny larvae and the floating bloodworms. Suddenly you have a concentrated ball of baitfish darting around frantically in the shallows, snapping at invisible bugs. The water starts to nervously dimple on the surface. You will see tiny flashes of silver just on the edge of the dirt line. This is the first stage of the trap. You have successfully drawn in the bottom of the food chain, and by congregating all of this nervous, hyperactive bait in one small area, you are setting the stage for the heavy hitters to arrive. The dinner bell has officially been rung. Once the baitfish are swarming the mud plume, the real magic happens. The predators notice the chaotic behavior of the minnows, a largemouth bass sitting near a weed bed, or a big crappie suspended near a stump, will sense the frantic vibrations of the baitfish. They do not care about the bugs you stirred up. They care about the smaller fish that are eating the bugs. The predators see an opportunity to ambush prey that is distracted by eating. The murky water actually works in the predator's favor, giving them a screen to hide behind before they strike. They will cruise the perimeter where the muddy water meets the clear water, waiting for a minnow to make a wrong move. Suddenly, the spot that was completely dead 20 minutes ago is now the most active part of the lake. You have created a localized ecosystem boom just by getting your boots dirty. The predators move in, their aggression levels spike, and they are ready to destroy anything that looks like an easy meal, including your lure. This completely shatters the myth of the permanently spooked fish. Yes, if you drop a heavy tackle box on an aluminum boat bench, that metallic crack will silence a cove. But organic, messy disturbances like wading through mud are a natural part of a fish's daily life. Animals cross rivers, cows wade into ponds to drink, turtles dig in the mud, and large fish splash around. The fear response to this type of noise is incredibly short-lived. We are talking about a memory span of just a few minutes. Once the physical threat is gone, the biological drive to eat takes over completely. Hunger will always override temporary caution, especially when the scent of exposed food is overwhelmingly strong in the water. So, the old-school guys who tell you to pack up and leave if you accidentally make a splash are simply missing out on the rebound bite. The fish did not leave the zip code, they just backed off, and now they are circling back, hungrier and more aggressive than they were before you made the mistake. Let me give you a real-life scenario that happens all the time. You are fishing a muddy bank on a tough afternoon. The sun is high, the wind is dead, and you have not had a single bite in 3 hours. You make a cast, and your favorite lure gets snagged hard on a submerged root just 5 feet from the shore. You try pulling, you try snapping the line, but it is stuck. Finally, out of sheer frustration, you stomp right into the water to retrieve it. You splash around, curse a little bit, kick the mud up, grab your lure, and stomp back to the bank. You are angry, thinking you definitely ruined whatever small chance you had left. But you make a frustrated, half-hearted cast right back into that swirling cloud of mud you just made. And bam! The rod is nearly ripped out of your hands. A massive fish smashes the lure the second it hits the dirty water. You think it was just dumb luck, but it was not luck at all. Your temper tantrum accidentally executed one of the most effective chumming strategies in fresh water. So how do you actually do this on purpose without looking like a crazy person? We call it the stomp and stir method. You do not want to just run into the water blindly. First, you assess the bank to make sure it is safe to wade. You step into the water, about knee-deep, and you intentionally drag your feet. You do a twisting motion with your heels, grinding down into the top layer of silt. You want to loosen up the debris and let the water flow carry it outward. You spend about 30 to 60 seconds making a deliberate, contained mess. You are trying to create a dense, billowing cloud of brown water that is maybe 10 to 15 feet wide. Once you have a good plume going, you slowly and quietly step back onto the dry bank. You do not cast immediately. You give it about 2 to 3 minutes. You wait for the heavy particles to sink, leaving behind a cloudy, scented zone of water. You let the baitfish find the bugs first. You are setting a very specific trap, and patience here is the key to springing it. Of course, this technique requires the right kind of bottom composition. If you try this on a solid rock bed or clean white sand, nothing is going to happen. You will just make your feet wet and look silly. You need an area with a soft, forgiving bottom. Look for places where leaves gather in the corners of a pond, or where a slow-moving creek empties into a larger body of water, depositing silt. You want that dark, squishy, slightly smelly mud that feels like peanut butter under your boots. That is the gold mine. That is where all the biological life is trapped. However, you also have to be smart about safety. Never step into deep, bottomless muck where you can sink to your waist and get stuck. You only need to be in ankle to knee-deep water to make this work. The goal is to disturb the top few inches of the sediment, not to excavate a trench. Find the right mud, kick up a storm in the shallows, and let the physics of the water do the rest of the work for you. When it comes to actually fishing the mud cloud you just created, your casting strategy is critical. Do not just throw your bait dead into the center of the thickest mud immediately. The fish are not blind, but they cannot see through a brick wall of dirt either. Instead, you want to target the edges. We call it the mud line. This is the transition zone where the dark, swirling water slowly blends into the natural, clearer water of the lake. Predators love to use this exact line as an ambush point. They will sit in the slightly clearer water, staring into the cloudy abyss, waiting for a panicked baitfish to dart out. You want to cast your lure past the mud cloud and slowly retrieve it so that it swims right along that transition line. You want your bait to pop in and out of the dirty water. This erratic visibility triggers a pure reaction strike. The fish sees a flash of movement escaping the mud, assumes it is a fleeing minnow, and destroys it before it has time to think. Another fascinating aspect of this strategy is how it triggers the competitive nature of fish. When one fish decides to eat, it sends a signal to every other fish in the pack. If a school of bluegill or a pair of bass swim up to your mud cloud, they are initially just curious. But the second one of those fish darts forward to grab a tumbling bug or a distressed minnow, the competition instinct kicks into high gear. Fish are incredibly greedy. If they see their buddy eating, they want a piece of the action before the food is gone. This competitive aggression escalates rapidly. What starts as one curious fish investigating a muddy patch quickly turns into a violent competitive feeding frenzy, where multiple fish are slashing at the water, trying to beat each other to the punch. In this heightened state of aggression, their natural caution goes completely out the window. They stop caring about the shadow on the bank or the splash of your lure. All they care about is winning the race for the food. Because you are fishing in heavily stained water that you just created, your bait selection needs to adapt to the conditions. Natural, translucent colors are going to completely disappear in that brown soup. You need baits that create contrast and vibration. This is the perfect time to tie on a bright chartreuse spinnerbait, a dark black and blue jig, or a loud, rattling crankbait. You want something that pushes water and makes a ton of noise, so the predators can track it using their lateral lines before they even see it. If you are using live bait or cut bait, this technique is absolute dynamite. A big, juicy nightcrawler tossed right on the edge of the mudline is almost unfair. The fish are already swimming in looking for exposed worms, and you just served them the biggest, easiest one of the day. The combination of the natural scent of the mud, the commotion of the baitfish, and a highly visible or smelly offering is a recipe for a bent rod. If you are targeting catfish, this mudding technique is arguably the most powerful weapon you can have in your arsenal. Catfish are the ultimate bottom scavengers. Their entire bodies are covered in taste buds, and their long barbels are specifically designed to detect disturbed mud and struggling prey in pitch-black conditions. When you stomp the bank and release that cloud of trapped gases and decaying matter, it is like ringing a dinner gong for every channel cat in the area. They do not rely on sight. They follow the scent trail directly to the source like a bloodhound. I have seen days where the water is dead quiet, and after intentionally churning up the shallows, the catfish arrive in droves within 10 minutes. They will practically swim between your boots, looking for the food you just dug up. If you throw a piece of cut bait into that muddy swirl, it usually will not sit on the bottom for more than 60 seconds before the line starts peeling off your reel. This tactic also translates beautifully from still ponds to moving rivers, but the dynamic changes a bit. In a river or a creek, the current is going to take your mud cloud and stretch it out into a long, narrow ribbon downstream. This is actually a massive advantage. By stomping the mud in a current, you are creating a natural chum slick that can reach hundreds of yards down the river. Any trout, smallmouth bass, or catfish holding behind rocks downstream is going to taste and smell that disturbance. They will instantly know that food is being washed down from above. You can literally stand in one spot, kick up the dirt, and draw fish up to you from deep pools far down the river. You just cast your bait into the dirty water lane and let it drift naturally with the current alongside the floating bugs and debris. It is a highly active, highly strategic way to fish moving water that most traditional anglers completely ignore because they are too afraid of making a mess. So why do so many older, experienced fishermen absolutely hate this trick? It comes down to the psychology of fishing traditions. Fishing is deeply rooted in ritual. We love the peace, the quiet, and the idea of outsmarting a wild creature on its own terms. Breaking the rules by stomping around and making a muddy mess feels unrefined. It feels like cheating, or worse, it feels amateurish. If another fisherman sees you intentionally kicking mud into the water, they will probably shake their head and think you have lost your mind. But the results simply do not lie. Fish do not care about our human traditions or our notions of proper etiquette. They care about survival, calories, and easy opportunities. Once you let go of the fear of doing it wrong, and you start looking at the water through the eyes of a hungry predator, you realize that a little bit of tactical chaos is exactly what you need to break a slow streak. You have to be willing to look a little foolish to catch the fish that everyone else is missing. To sum up the action, you are taking a dead, quiet morning with absolutely zero bites, and you are manually forcing the ecosystem to wake up. You are the catalyst. You step in, you break the seal on the bottom, you release the trapped bugs, you create the scent trail, and you trigger the baitfish. The baitfish bring in the predators get competitive, and suddenly you have manufactured an artificial feeding frenzy right at your feet. All because you decided to ignore the golden rule of staying quiet and keeping your boots clean. It is a bold, aggressive tactic that requires you to read the bottom composition, understand the food chain, and have the patience to let the trap unfold. Next time you are standing on a muddy bank, staring at motionless water and feeling the frustration set in, remember that the solution might not be a different lure or a lighter line. The solution might literally be right under your boots, just waiting for you to kick it into gear. So let us bring it all together. We just completely dismantled one of the oldest, most sacred rules of fishing. We proved that intentionally walking into the water, making a huge muddy mess, and causing a commotion is not the disaster Grandpa warned you about. The biggest twist here is that by doing everything wrong, making noise, dirtying the water, and acting clumsy, you are actually perfectly imitating nature's own dinner bell. You are unlocking hidden food, creating a scent trail, and manipulating the competitive instincts of predatory fish. This completely changes how you should approach a tough day on the bank. Instead of giving up when it is quiet, you now have the power to jumpstart the food chain and create your own luck. Thank you so much for watching and keeping an open mind with us today. If you want to keep breaking the rules and learning the real gritty tactics that actually catch fish, make sure you hit that subscribe button right now. Leave a big like on this video and head down to the comments section. Tell me, have you ever caught a massive fish right after accidentally making a huge splash or getting snagged in the mud? Let us hear your best stories.